Welcome to the Gridiron Expert. I'm Connor Hibbett. Next up on our team previews, we're going to be looking at the Oklahoma Sooners. And joining us on the show is Travis Davidson. Travis, welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I try not to waste any opportunity to talk about Oklahoma football. Exciting time to do so. A lot of new exciting pieces. We'll see how they all fit. There's no way to tell until they get out there on the field. So, thank you for having me, Connor.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into the position group breakdowns, Travis, please tell our viewers where they can find your content.
Yeah, all over the place, really. I do local radio here on KREF, KREF, the home of Sooner fans. I do, I guess, during the summer, I'm on Fridays from 3 to 6 here, Central Standard Time, the best time zone that there is. And then I'm also JP and Trav show on YouTube. And with OU Insider during football season, I do the pregame podcast with them. So I contribute a little bit all over the place. So, yeah.
Well, you're staying busy just like Oklahoma stayed busy with the transfer portal. And as you mentioned, they picked up some intriguing pieces. And we'll start off there at the quarterback spot with John Mateer coming in from Washington State, perhaps the most talked about transfer quarterback in the country this year. So, what is the expectation for Mateer? I mean, he was a numbers guy at Washington State. He was a dual threat quarterback, obviously. He was a do it all guy. I mean, the offense weighed heavily on his shoulders. So, how do you think Mateer now will do transferring to the SEC against that kind of competition?
Yeah, I mean, there's truly no way to tell, but you like your chances whenever he's a guy that's coming with his offensive coordinator, right? We saw this with Diego Paiva. We saw it in the past. Even there was a year separated, but Dylan Gabriel and Jeff Lebby. You're seeing people kind of pair together with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, right? Like when you have that consistent language, that consistent, if a new OC comes in, the quarterback already knows the offense, he can help teach the offense, things like that. Like I think we're going to see it much more going forward. Even there were other offensive coordinators that Oklahoma, media and otherwise had rumors to be looking at. And all of them, for the most part, were like, okay, are they bringing their quarterback with? Like we would bring like a Darian Mensah or something like that. Like, all right, we're bringing their quarterback too. So I think it's interesting how you're starting to see these package deals, and I think it'll only become more and more prevalent because it's been successful for the most part. So I think he's going to do well. I think he'll run a little bit less because I think he won't need to run as much. Obviously, we'll get into the running back edition, the big splash running back edition that we have, but also just I don't think they want him running quite as much, right? He can do it, but and he's built. He can take a beating, but it's a little bit different when you've got, a guy like, Harold Perkins or somebody like that, coming across the middle to try and take your head off, as opposed to some of the defenders that were on their schedule at Washington State last year. But I think with him, it's more of the knowledge of the offense. I think he's only going to grow another year under Coach Coos and under Ben Arbuckle. I think Michael Hawkins Jr. is going to push him a lot. Michael Hawkins Jr. is more talented and more now experienced with an SEC win under his belt in his first start. He's going to push John Mateer in a way that I don't think many quarterbacks in the SEC, even maybe even the country, are going to have to deal with. And I'm always a guy that harps on, hey, look, if I were to time you running 20 yards against a stopwatch, and then I chased you with a knife and had you do it again, you'd probably run faster the time I chased you with a knife. Well, Michael Hawkins Jr. is the guy with the knife in this situation, and he's plenty fast. So I think that's really going to push John Mateer to be the best version of himself and make the offense into the best version of itself as a result.
What do you think the percentage snaps will be, like the split snaps between Mateer and Hawkins for this coming fall?
I mean, Mateer's the starter. I think let's call it what it is, when you invest financially in somebody in the portal, he's bringing his offensive coordinator in. He's proven at this level, again, not at the SEC level, but at the college football level. I think they might have some packages for Michael Hawkins Jr., but I think best case scenario is, John Mateer takes 100% of the meaningful quarterback snaps this year, plays well enough to go to the NFL, and then Michael Hawkins Jr. seamlessly takes over the reins going into 2026 with really, kind of that Kyler Murray vibe that we saw behind Baker Mayfield, not needing to have a kind of a warm up to it. Like Michael Hawkins Jr. would be ready immediately in 2026 to take over as the starter. So, there may be some packages because of the athleticism that Michael Hawkins Jr. brings, with the ability to throw the ball downfield. But it's funny because Mateer and Jackson Arnold and Michael Hawkins Jr. all kind of grew up in that same DFW Metroplex that you're so familiar with, right?
Yep.
Ben Geyer for Jackson Arnold, right? Like, they've always used to kind of be in the same training facilities for the most part. They played each other at times. Hawkins Jr. as he was at Allen, then he was at Frisco. So it's pretty fascinating that, OU still diving into that DFW Metroplex, which is why I think they're going to be, so successful as the sport continues to warp and adapt and regionality goes away, this, that, and the other. Well, Norman is still going to be very close to the DFW, and that they got enough talent to go around. So I think Mateer is going to take all of the meaningful snaps. I think that would be what the plan would be. And then if something goes wrong, injury wise, something like that, I think they're okay with Michael Hawkins Jr. stepping in and handling the reins for a while.
Oklahoma is maybe the only program in the country this coming fall that can say they have two Houdini-like quarterbacks in their quarterback room. I mean, like both of these guys got a little bit of magic in them. They can make something happen when nothing is there. Like these guys are like your prototypical guys of, I mean, getting again something out of nothing. But when a play goes wrong, can they step up and make something and make something happen? And I think like Mateer, we saw a lot last year at Washington State. When the play breaks down, Mateer is going to get yards. He's going to find someone. He's going to lengthen the play. He's going to scramble out of the pocket, and again, he's going to find someone downfield. And Michael Hawkins, as you mentioned, he's got a lot of talent here. So this is a really exciting quarterback room. Would you say, Travis, that Oklahoma has one of the best quarterback rooms in the country?
Absolutely. I think it would be hard to make an argument against one of the best, right? I mean, they've got the nation's leader in touchdowns from a year ago, right? You've got Michael Hawkins Jr., who the first time he started a game beat Auburn on the road, and a former four-star himself, has the SEC experience, has the requisite talent to be a game changer. I mean, Curtis Lofton, our last GM that we had before Jim Nagy, said that, Michael Hawkins Jr. with Arbuckle will win a Heisman at Oklahoma. And Mateer is, on a lot of top 10 lists and things like that nationally right now. So it would be hard to convince me that it's not a top five room at minimum right now, just knowing what we've got on paper. Now we'll see how it translates on the field.
And then you briefly mentioned a few minutes ago the exciting running back addition out of the transfer portal, and that's obviously Jaden Ott from Cal. There's quality depth here in the running back room. How do you think it's going to shake out in terms of the percentage of carries? Do you think Jaden Ott's going to be a bell cow type of running back, or is this going to be Jaden Ott is going to be used in multiple facets, but we're going to see a lot of guys this coming season?
Well, yeah, I mean, if DeMarco Murray showed us anything at Oklahoma, you never know with the rotations what you're going to get. He values practice habits, he values all that. But again, with Jaden Ott, it's it is what it is in the 2025 NIL era. Jaden Ott was paid well to be at Oklahoma. That is going to be your bell cow. And I also think that Jim Nagy understands. He looks at the roster and says, okay, who are my NFL guys? And Jaden Ott came back, if you remember, off that stellar 2023 season. A lot of people were doing some draft work on him. Jim Nagy, before he had any inkling that Oklahoma was ever going to be an option, was tweeting out, scouting tape that, hey, look, this is what scouts love about this Jaden Ott guy. He's, we're looking at him in this draft range, this, that, and the other. So Jaden Ott, after this season, will be drafted. The question is where it will be. But I do think it'll be a bell cow situation. Obviously, Xavier Robinson really had people excited near the end of the season, how he was running, catches the ball well out of the backfield, logged a 22-mile-an-hour pace, top speed against Alabama on a touchdown run. He's a local kid from Carl Albert here in Oklahoma, so a lot of local fans. So you've got him. He's a strong back, exciting guy. You've got Jaden Ott. You've got Taylor Tatum, who was the number one running back in the country in a true freshman a year ago who will be coming up. Dealt with some fumble issues, but obviously has the talent there. You've got Javante Barnes still in that room, who has the most carries as a Sooner, most yards as a Sooner, it's still in that room. So, I kind of look at those guys being the top four, and kind of letting Torrey Blaylock, the exciting freshman, come along at times. He's a speed demon. If he has an opportunity to show that off at times, maybe late in games, he could carve out a little bit of a role. But I do think this will be a Jade Knott backfield.
So looking at the receiver room, this group could not stay healthy last year. But for this season, if he's healthy, I would expect Dion Burks to be wide receiver one, the alpha of this room. What is the anticipation in terms of the depth, the go-to targets here outside of Burks?
Well, it comes down to the name Gibson, and that is whether you were talking about Jaden Gibson or whether you're talking about Giovanni Gibson. Giovanni Gibson, of course, the UAPB transfer, was turning all kinds of heads in the spring before he had a bit of an injury issue. And then Jaden Gibson still fighting back from an injury from last year. Brent Venables says that Giovanni and Jaden will both be ready. Uh, you know, Oklahoma fans are a bit scarred a little bit, so they're like, well, we'll believe it when we see it. But Isaiah Satania, got banged up a little bit in the spring, should be fine. You've got Josiah Martin, who they brought in from Cal, who had a nice spring. You've got Keontez Lewis, who had a nice spring. So you've got a lot of names like that. Obviously, Deion Burks is the headliner, but you've got exciting young guys that were actually forced because of the injuries last year into some time, right? Zion Ragan, Zion Kearney, right? You've got Ivan Carrion, those type of guys that got some good snaps last year, and we'll see how it pays off going into this next season.
Do you think that this receiver room is going to take multiple leaps in improvement this year, or do you think it's just going to be a let's wait and see what we have outside of Dion Burks and still like a prove it to me kind of thing?
I would say it has to take leaps because there's no way we deal with the injury luck. I mean, knock on wood, but there's no way we deal with the injury luck that we dealt with last year. I mean, Andrel Anthony was incredible his first year here after he transferred from Michigan. He didn't play at all. Nick Anderson didn't play at all, really. Deion Burks didn't play at all, really. Right? Jaden Gibson didn't play at all, really. Jalil Farouk didn't play at all, really. Like you're down, Brennan Thompson after he went down, like you were down your top six wide receivers. Like I just don't think that that's a reality going forward, like that we're going to deal with that. Again, knocking on wood. So don't blame me if it goes wrong. But yeah, I think you've just got more bodies now. I think a lot would have to go wrong for Oklahoma to not take a leap, especially with Arbuckle, with, even with the young guys getting more experience that I just mentioned, all the freshmen from a year ago, getting a bit forced into some action and forced to grow up a little bit quicker than they maybe would have thought. Manny Choice, one of the talented freshmen that are coming in, Eli Thomas, another talented freshman coming in from locally here in Oklahoma. So I think the wide receiver room is going to be, from a production standpoint, leaps and bounds better.
So the offensive line last year, going into 2024, returned zero starters from 2023. This group was also kind of injury lingered throughout the 2024 season. There's more experience coming back. Also, some of those guys that were injured early on in the season, some of those guys return. There's a star offensive tackle coming in from the 2025 recruiting class. They also bring in a couple of intriguing transfers here, particularly one in the offensive tackle room. Do you think this offensive line will improve significantly this year, or are there still questions here?
Yeah, same song, different verse when it comes to, offensive line compared to the wide receivers, right? You go in, to your point, zero, starters going in 2024, and then four out of those five guys got hurt. So it's like you're really forcing some guys, like a Logan Howland, like a Heath Zaida, like these guys to step up and be, I mean, Isaiah Autry Dent, these young guys that in a perfect world should not be starting like at LSU, should not be starting Red River, like should not be starting against these top teams as freshmen or first time ever starters or redshirt freshmen. Just shouldn't be the case. Yet they're thrown out there. Again, you develop that depth going into this year. So now they're experienced and they actually improve throughout the year. But now you've got, you brought up Derek Simmons, was a tackle that's coming across. He'll compete with Jake Taylor for that starting right tackle job. Luke Baklenko came in. Jake Michla came in. Michla was the late add with Jay Knott in the spring portal. So that's a interior offensive line depth that they brought in there. So if you've got healthy Jake Sexton, if you've got healthy EPL and Fabechi Wiwu and all these guys, your Troy Everett who should be your starting center. You've just got a lot of guys. You mentioned Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje. You've just got a ton of talent in that room, and if it can stay healthy, again, it should improve dramatically because you've got talent. I don't think you lost as much in the portal as you thought you would lose. Eugene Brooks obviously left. Like, I just don't think. Looking at what you have in that room now, you've got the requisite talent and experience now with the best developer in college football in Bill Bedenbaugh. I mean, I like those odds.
So in regards like to the offensive tackles here, so Derek Simmons, you mentioned, transfers in from Western Carolina. He was one of the best offensive linemen in the portal this offseason. He did not allow a single sack last year at the FCS level. And then so Logan Howland is the top rated recruit in OU's 2025 recruiting class and is now expected obviously to make an immediate impact. Are there any like concerns with these two in terms of the competition level here? Like obviously Simmons transferring up from the FCS, Howland a true star or a true freshman. Is there any concern here with these guys, or do you think that they are going to be ready immediately to play at a high level?
Yeah, so Logan Howland actually has been at Oklahoma a couple years. Michael Fasusi was the top rated tackle.
Oh, okay.
But same
You're
question
right.
stands, right? We'll
Yeah.
just swap out the names. So, Susie had a fantastic spring. He looks the part. He's got to get, as all freshmen do, stronger, especially if you're going to be playing tackle in the SEC. He's one of these prospects. He proved it at camps, the on three camp. They were talking about, hey, this guy truly is the best offensive tackle in the country. But I don't think it's a good idea to put expectations on a kid playing left tackle in the SEC, saying, "Hey, look, go in there, and if you don't perform well, what's everybody going to call you, right? A bust, a five-star bust. Oh, blah blah blah." Like, I think if he does get reps, I think he should. It's going to come behind a guy like Logan Howland, come behind a guy like a Jacob Sexton, both who have started at left tackle in the SEC and, when healthy, have done well. And Logan has developed, right? He had to gain weight. He was a former tight end that was developed into a left tackle. But I think you look at those guys, and they're good. You allow Michael Fasusi some time to get in behind them and get rotated in, and if he goes up and gets the job, then it's because he was just so talented that they just couldn't hold him off. I don't think the talent up top is going to come down to him, if that makes sense. I think it's going to be his to try. He's going to have to go try and take it. I don't think guys like Sexton and Howland are just going to give way to him. As far as the right tackle situation with Derek Simmons, like Jake Taylor, they brought in, a P4 tackle last year, and Jake Taylor beat him out and then dealt with some crazy injuries throughout the year, ended up giving way at the end of the year. I I think Derek Simmons is going to translate extremely well at right tackle. I still think Jake Taylor has a really good shot at beating him out for that job just because I saw him do it last year when he was hurt. So now that he's healthy, I could see him going after that. Obviously, Jake Taylor, the Bishop Gorman product, four-star, who was in the same class as Jacob Sexton. And those were kind of going to ideally be your two tackle bookends eventually, right? Jacob Sexton, obviously, out of Deer Creek. Like, those were going to be your guys. And I think it's possible that this season it finally does come to fruition that those two are your guys. They were originally committed to Lincoln Riley. That's how long they've been here. So I do think that you might see that throughout the year, but would not be shocked if Derek Simmons or Michael Fasusi play a good amount of snaps.
And so because of the injuries last year up front, and then with some of the transfers that Oklahoma brings in, there seems to be like quality depth here on the offensive line to where like there's again, yeah, I'm gonna do what you just did, knock on wood here. But if there's as long as there's not like a ton of injuries here, Oklahoma looks like pretty good with like what 8, 9, 10 guys here.
Yeah, I think they're super deep. And that's why, during portal season, I was like, guys, You don't want everybody was like, go get 5 to 8 offensive linemen out of the transfer portal. Like, no, guys, we just needed them to get healthy. Like, you've got plenty of good depth, high level depth here, and now you've got the right mix of experience and high end talent in like a Foje and a Fasusi, those type of guys. You've got the right mix there where you just let the cream rise at the top.
So looking at the offense overall for Oklahoma, what is a position group that you point at and say, you know what, more people need to be talking about this position group? Like they're better than you think.
I will stay at the offensive line because I think wide receivers got to get healthy, but I do think a lot of people, the wide receivers get talked about a lot because wide receivers is a sexy position, especially in recruiting. I think our quarterback and our running back positions have been widely talked about with the additions of Mateer and Ott. I do think our tight end room may struggle a bit. That's something you can scheme around, but it's just been tough to find that difference maker in the portal at the position. Obviously, we bring in Carson Kent and Will Huggins. We'll see. We moved Jaron Kanik over to that room, but I do think the offensive line is going to shock some people because even from a national perspective, you bring Mateer in, and every burner account from every other SEC team's like, well, who's going to block for him? It's like, guys, like don't like they just lack so much context of what our offensive line dealt with, injury wise last year and what the pieces that have been added this year. So, I mean, you added talent from the portal. You added talent from a recruiting class that a lot of people said was the best talent in the whole class. And then you bring back dudes and they're finally healthy. So you're getting better from three fronts on the offensive line. So I really do think that they'll be significantly better than what the casual fan would expect them to be.
Yeah, this Oklahoma offense could go from, people like if you're looking like in the preview magazines, it's going to be viewed from last year's perspective as a weakness for Oklahoma, but it can go from an unknown to a flat out strength for the Sooners in 2025.
Yeah, oh, easily. If it doesn't, then there are going to be some really uncomfortable conversations around the Switzer Center. So no, I think it will. I think you brought in a highly touted offensive coordinator who's had nothing but success. He's going to have more talent at his disposal than he ever has. Brought in a quarterback that led the nation in touchdowns last year, who's going to be surrounded by more talent than he's ever had. You've got offensive line depth now. You've got wide receivers getting healthier that are talented. You bring in Jaden Ott. I just don't see how the offense isn't dramatically improved.
Looking over to the defense, so this is obviously going to be a quality unit with Brent Venables, and it should be once again. There's a lot of experience coming back. We'll start up front. There's a lot of good players here. Like, I mean, obviously the defensive ends have a lot of upside here with Mason Thomas, Marvin Jones transferring in from Florida State. The interior defensive line positions, there's a lot of depth here as well. You were just smiling there. The defensive line has a lot of upside here, doesn't it?
Yeah, should be a great group. Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis have done a fantastic job there. You bring in Marvin Jones Jr. and the upside is just again, Jim Nagy looks at traits, right? He says traits a lot because he's an NFL draft type, and it's Marvin Jones Jr. He's got the traits, right? Miguel Chavis has to get it out of him, but R. Mason Thomas, one of the most um, uh, productive pass rushers of last year, and really anytime he's been healthy. And then in the interior, you bring back David Stone after a little bit of portal saga that was going on. But Grayson Holton, that'll be a guy that gets drafted this next year, right? You've obviously the Dominic Williams was the big splash in last year's portal. He's back again. You've got Jaden Jackson, who was a freshman All-American last year. He's still going to be there, right? You've got Marvin Jones, and you've got names there, and not to mention on the outside, you've still got your PJ Adebawores, that former five-star, right? You've got other dudes that can rush the passer, and I think the defensive line, while the front seven on the linebacker side, I think will feel the absence of Danny Stutzman a bit. Granted, Kip Lewis is a star, but we'll feel it a little bit just due to the experience and the production that Danny Stutzman provided. I do think the defensive line will be better this year than it has been under Brent Venables in his head coaching tenure.
So, looking at the depth, as you just mentioned, with the interior and then some of the projected starters at defensive end, do you think the defensive line has the upside to be one of the top 10 defensive lines in the country?
I do. They've got to put it together. Like, you got to go out there and execute. But on paper, I don't see how they wouldn't. Like I said, returning freshman All-American, returning, all conference guys in the past on the interior, and a guy like Dominic Williams, five-star David Stone taking that next step and really replacing Dejon Terry's snaps. R. Mason Thomas is going to be, all SEC, on the preseason lists. And then Marvin Jones, it's really that other spot, right? Like, what does that look like? And so I think the unit, you know, production wise, we'll see. A lot of their production will be how that back end holds up. If the corners and safeties can cover like I hope they can cover, then you'll have the production to match with that. And we were good against the run last year, so I think we will continue with that. So maybe a top 10 unit, but definitely like a top 15, 20 unit.
So the back end of the defense here probably has a little bit more questions than the defensive line does. So linebacker, obviously, no. There's some guys having to step up, filling some big roles from last year. Kip Lewis, you mentioned, could be a star here at the weak side linebacker position, and then Kobe McKenzie at the middle linebacker spot. There's some decent depth here, and then we'll combine the linebackers here with the secondary. What is the ultimate expectation, I guess, for the back end of the defense here with some of the production that leaves? I mean, Peyton Bowen, Eli Bowen, and then there's the two Kendalls at the cheetah position. Like there are some like known entities back here, some potential breakthrough players. But do you think that the back end of the Oklahoma defense can do its part to make this a top 10, top 15 overall unit?
I mean, it's going to have to, right? I mean, I know OU fans were, clamoring for a backup, corner in the portal, right? But the problem with that is it's very hard to find quality backups in the portal. It's easy to find starters because you can guarantee them what two things they want in the portal, right? Money and snaps. You can guarantee those things to a starter. It's easier to find third string guys because you can promise them development and they've got a lot, a long runway. You can get freshmen, sophomores, and redshirt sophomores and things like that because you get more of a long runway and they're more affordable. Backups are tough because they can go start. If you can be a backup at Oklahoma, you can probably start at a G5 school or some of the lower P4. So, are they going to want to come back up? A Gentry Williams, right, who's back healthy, 100% healthy again, or an Eli Bowen who was a freshman All-American last year? Like, do you really want to sign up for that, knowing that if those two guys are healthy, you really stand no chance to start, or do you want to go and play elsewhere? So, I think corner depth, um, will be interesting. We've got six guys there right now, and three of them probably really haven't played much. You've got Gentry and Eli probably starting. Jacoby Johnson started last year at times, who talented out of Mustang, Oklahoma, just insane athlete, big, long, tall. Playing corner is just kind of unfair at times. But like behind that, you don't really have a lot. So, I think where Oklahoma would like to be is just keep those two front guys healthy. And if you were to tell me, hey, Travis, what went wrong for Oklahoma? Like if you woke me up out of a coma and said, hey, Travis, Oklahoma went 6-6, what happened? I would probably say, well, what must have happened is that, Oklahoma's corner depth, didn't hold up or something like that. Because after the corners I had mentioned, you've got Cortland Guillory, who's a freshman. You've got Michael Hawkins Jr., younger brother, Malik Hawkins, who's a freshman, and then Devon Jordan out of Union, my alma mater here in Tulsa, who has been great since he's been on campus, but he hasn't played much. So, like that's what you have behind your kind of top three corners snaps wise. Your secondary, that like your safety room, absolutely loaded. Like you've got Peyton Bowen, former five-star, right? The dramatic recruitment. You've got RSJ, who's a bona fide NFL draft pick. I think through a little over half the season, he was PFF's top-rated safety in the country. He's a big physical guy here from the 918 as well, originally from Mansfield, down in your neck of the woods. But yeah, the Cheetahs are going to be great. Kendall Dolby might have to spend some time at corner because he was the number one rated JUCO corner when he arrived at Oklahoma. So he might spend some time at corner if we get banged up there because you've got guys like a Michael Boganowski or like a Reggie Powers, those type of guys, Kendall Daniels who can play that cheetah position. So yeah, I think you're versatile through the middle of that secondary. But corner, thank God Kendall Dolby's getting back healthy. He can spell you a corner if you need. But if that holds up, we'll be in good shape.
Oklahoma seems to be in a really good position to significantly improve. Obviously, not just from a team perspective, production standpoint, but also potentially from a win total perspective. So I'm going to ask you a hot question kind of here. It's one that's been talked about by a lot of the media here in the offseason. Do you think Oklahoma could be that team that goes from a losing record to challenging for a playoff spot?
Oh, absolutely. I think our schedule is brutal. There's no doubt about it. But I do think our schedule, because many have it as the toughest schedule in America. I mean, we traded out Maine for Michigan, and we've got big time opponents up and down this schedule. I do think there's a possibility that like a 9-3 Oklahoma challenges for a playoff spot, depending on how the rest of it shakes out. And I do think 9-3 is absolutely on the table. I think 10-2 is on the table. I think at Oklahoma, with the offensive additions and a fourth year Brent Venables defense, I think 11-1 is on the table. 12-0 is like ceiling at Oklahoma. Ceiling, if everything goes right with the current roster, 12-0 is absolutely on the table. 7-5 is also on the table. 6-6 is probably on the table. You know what I mean? So I do think that this team is equipped to make the playoff with I mean, their offense was abysmal, like bad record setting at Oklahoma last year. Like, if you can turn that around, and we were still in a good amount of games, if you can turn that around, get to 9, 10 wins, I think the committee would look favorably on us.
See, and that's the thing. Like most 500 teams, they pretty much are what their record says they are. But for Oklahoma last year, everything went wrong, and they were 6-6, which tells you the capabilities of this team when everything goes right, like you just mentioned. So yeah, Oklahoma definitely seems to be destined, knock on wood, if they can stay healthy, for a really good turnaround season this coming year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, Oklahoma fans, they got some scar tissue, but just got to see it come to fruition. Got to get the wide receivers healthy. Got to see what the offensive line looks like. But quarterback, check. Offensive coordinator, check. Running back, check. Like those are all three very layup improvements that everybody can agree on. And then off like wide receiver room should be healthier. Check. Like you look at every single position group on offense should be improved. I'm excited about it.
Well, Travis, really good job previewing the Sooners for this coming season. We really appreciate you being on the channel.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate you.